It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Been talking about, so there's a slight correction, or there was a slight controversy, really. It kind of happened on Twitter where people were going back and forth. The Gazette reports that it was a $1.15 increase proposed. The tax farce going to be looking at this $15% or $1.15 increase. I'm sorry, $1.50, extra $1.50. Well, then this kind of broke out on Twitter. And, Conduit News tweeted another tax task force meeting, another discussion on how to raise taxes, yet the politicians get mad when constituents find out and ask them about it. And so you have the Tax Foundation, Nicole Keading, who's the director of special projects at the Tax Foundation, and she's working and giving the task force information. She says, were y'all there today? Because that's not what happened at all. The task force identified priorities for cutting $200 million in taxes. Now, it's an interesting response because no one's talking about, there's nothing that was being said about the broad impact here. We're just talking specifically about this goal, another way to raise revenue. And Conduit News responds saying, this is a retweet from the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. And Nicole Keading says, yes, from day one, was there both days, he can confirm. This is his article, direct quotes from Jim Hendren saying they are not there to raise taxes, but to raise them on cigarettes to reduce somewhere else is a legitimate proposal on that issue. That we just read you that quote in the Gazette. And Nicole says, and if you have followed today's debate, you know that it wasn't proposed. So Conduit News says, okay, so is this a lie too? Has a quote from you. Thanks for opposing the tax increase. Lawmakers consider 15-cent tobacco tax. And then Nicole Keading says, that did get proposed. Yes, I never said it didn't. Just said the $1.50 didn't get proposed. But even more important is that any proposal is part of the $200 million net tax cut. So coming back to the broad view, or at least the talking point, is what I believe that is at this point. I don't know why you would contrive to always bring that back up if you're not trying to really get ahead on some messaging here, because you don't want another grocery tax debacle, do you, Nicole? Jim doesn't want another grocery tax debacle. This is what they're worried about. See, I've read Nicole Keating's report that she's presented to the task force, where she talks about eliminating sales tax exemptions. And in that report, she says, of the sales tax exemptions that we are still considering, which means, they wanted to raise that grocery tax to the full sales tax level. So when you have the Democrat Gazette and the and KARK4 News kind of reporting the same thing, but I want to be clear, apparently there is some difference from day one to day two. I think the original proposal was to study a $1.50 tax increase on cigarettes. Now they're saying it's only 15 cents. Okay. So then you have Nicole, go back to the tweets here. Nicole Keading saying that it didn't get proposed, but then she says that it did get proposed, but she's just saying what didn't get proposed was the $1.50. She meant, but the 15 cents has been proposed to further study, from what I can tell. And then Conduit News, to remove any confusion on how much of a tax increase is proposed, we could have live streamed and archived videos of these meetings. Senate leadership continues to fight transparency. Nicole Keading says, I guess we have very different views. This has been an incredible, transparent process. The task force has been clear on their deliberations and process and continue to invite open comment. I've never seen a task force that has been this open and transparent. Stop. Where is she from, Joe? All right, so she's from the Tax Foundation and from Washington, D.C. So this is an example of her, because she's not from here. She has no idea the issue, the local issues. I get that she doesn't understand the local issues that are important to the way the Marble Palace works. We're trying to get transparency in the Marble Palace by putting cameras in the MAC building. This is a big deal. And there is confusion. Obviously, you have the statewide newspaper claiming a $1.50 tax that went out, sending you guys into a tailspin because you're trying to control the messaging. You have KRK talking about a $1.50 tax increase on cigarettes, again, sending you guys into a tailspin. It would really be clear, and it would actually help you guys, because you guys could have gone back and clipped out the audio and the video if you would live stream and archive all of the meetings down there, the way the House does when they're in their chamber or their committee rooms. But the Arkansas Senate doesn't want that, and I understand why. You don't want me to be able to make a Dan Douglas montage out of I don't know what Senator Jeremy Hutchinson says on the floor, or anybody else, or what Senator Hendren says on the floor. I get that, but in the interest of transparency, you guys signed up to run for public office, so your actions are the public's business when you're on the public's dime. It's not complicated issues. I understand some people may not, because they're not from here, they don't understand the dynamics and the intricacies of what I have been covering for so long, and that's the fact that a lack of transparency really hurts the electoral process, because you have a lot of voters that don't have the information that they could have if they would just not be afraid to go on record with what they're doing as they're legislating. And when they're pursuing these thoughts and they're pursuing these ideas, they're doing it in their constituents' names. And the idea that you're not going to stream and you're not going to record or archive is really an affront to them, because what you're saying is we would rather keep these people in the dark. We'd rather them not have the information to hold us accountable. It really seems that you, are almost afraid of what happens if the people were to find out what really goes on in the bowels of the Arkansas Senate. Maybe you'd be able to see when people leave the floor. I don't know. There was some discussion of that, in a way. I saw where Nicole Keading tweeted, "I get that Conduit News doesn't support the task force, but trying to mislead is sad." Nobody's trying to mislead anybody. Any more than the Arkansas Democrat Gazette and KRK ran stories on the very thing that we're discussing. Nobody's trying to mislead anybody. Now, if you want to have the argument, Nicole, that revenue-neutral tax cuts are not really tax cuts, that's not a radical position. Revenue-neutral tax cuts are not really tax cuts. There's plenty of people that hold that position. That's the position that I hold. That's the position that I advocate from. I believe that is fundamentally misleading. To tell the population that you've cut their taxes when it's revenue neutral and the tax burden is still the same overall on the population, and actually increased on these people over here and decreased on these people over here, I don't think you're presenting the clear picture. Okay? So if it's revenue neutral, then I don't consider that a real tax cut. Now, if it's not revenue neutral, and it actually is giving the government less money than they're getting now, forcing them to cut spending and prioritize better, I'm all for that. And if the task force does that, it will cease to be a farce in my eyes, and it will literally have done the exact thing that the leadership said, and they can take victory laps, and I will eat crow, and it'll be the best meal I've ever had, because this is not about me. This is not about Conduit News. This is about measurably reducing the size and scope of government, and in this particular arena, it's doing that with the tax code by decreasing the burden, by giving the people who are going to work every day relief, so that we can keep more of our own money, we can put it back in the market, we can save it, small business owners can invest, they can hire more people, we can then grow our tax base by having more taxpayers, and that gives the government more revenue. So, I just wanted to set the record straight there. I was monitoring this Twitter conversation the other day, or last night I was monitoring this, and Thought it was interesting.